Get our meeting started here. The Economic Development Authority here in Brainerd, Minnesota, July 3rd, 2021. It is now 7:31. We need to do roll call. So, Mr. Chansky, will you do that, please?
I can, Mr. Chair. Bevins. O'Day.
Here.
Johnson.
Here.
Beezer.
Here.
Kirsch.
Here.
And Erickson.
Here. Everyone's had a chance to look at the agenda. I need a motion to accept the agenda.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
No, we're good.
We can do all in favor? Okay. And then the approval of the last minutes of the meetings held on May 6th.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
One quick amendment to the minutes. I apologize that I did not catch on the May 18th EDA retreat minutes. It should say, they say Thursday, May 6th. They just need to be amended to say Tuesday, May 18th.
I move approval with that change. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Approved. Okay, financial report. Connie?
It was included in the packet. I have no additional questions or no additional comments unless you have some questions.
Hopefully everybody had a chance to see that. Nothing's changed a whole lot.
No, and there's not a whole lot of activity in the EDA fund
Right,
on a month-to-month basis, but
right. Need a motion to accept the financial report?
Motion.
Second.
Good morning, Kelly.
Morning.
We had a motion to accept the financial report. All in favor, say aye.
We'll need to do it with
Oh, wait.
roll call now, Mr. Chair.
We'll do
since
roll
Commissioner-
call.
Yep.
Thank you.
Bevins.
Yes.
O'Day.
Yes.
Johnson.
Yes.
Beezer.
Yeah.
Kirsch.
Yes.
And Erickson.
Yes, that motion has been accepted. Let's do the updates. Executive Director Jennifer?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Maybe just a couple of updates. One, just want to remind everybody about the sesquicentennial. That week, we're doing a week-long celebration from September 18th to the 25th, starting to plan or get calendar events on the calendar. We are going to be having larger group meetings starting in June with all of the partners to see if we can't start to get some of these events coordinated. Our communications intern did start, and so she's going to help us kind of coordinate this effort and move it forward. We'll have meetings with the larger group in June, July, August, and September in preparation for that sesquicentennial celebration. We did get banners. There's been a delay in them being shipped to us. We had expected them on the 28th. Found out this week that they probably wouldn't be here until Friday. Those banners do have the 150th logo that was designed by the mayor. And they'll be placed on, we ordered 250 banners, so they'll be on Washington Street, Mill Avenue, South 6th, and then downtown Brainerd. I think it'll look really nice. I'm anxious to see them up and just start honoring our 150th. Outside of that, I don't know that I have any other updates unless there are any questions for me.
I do have one question. How many banners have we sold or have been sold?
That's a good question. I don't know. So Visit Brainerd is coordinating that on behalf of the history group. Thank you, Tony, for mentioning that. The banners are being pre-sold at $75 a banner, and the proceeds of those banners will be going to the Brainerd History Group, and they are planning on purchasing a monument to honor the crossing. So I don't know. I can certainly follow up with Mary Devine Johnson, and I can get back to you. I can shoot the EDA an email and let you know how many have been pre-sold.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Jansky?
Mr. Chair, just got just 3 items. First is on Wednesday, May 26th, the Planning Commission held a special meeting to consider a rezoning and plan unit development request by Country Manor. They approved these requests. The purpose of this rezoning and plan unit development is to construct a senior living facility with 92 apartments and 18 memory care units with a commercial child daycare as part of that development as well. Those recommendations from the Planning Commission will be going before the City Council on June 7th as part of their regular meeting for their approval. With the plan unit development process, it is a multi-stage process, so this is their development stage plan. When they get ready to construct, they will come back with the final stage plan, and then they'll be able to do that construction. We do anticipate that they will be making a financial aid request, and at this time, staff, we do anticipate that we'd be bringing that request before the EDA for vetting before it goes to the city council. That'll be coming later this summer. Their intention is, once they get approval from the city council on the rezoning and their development stage plan, to go out for bid for their project, so they know where the project's gonna land, especially now with construction costs have varied so much since when they this is a project that's been in the works actually for them about 4 years, but they've been working with the city for about 3. So they need to know where construction costs are gonna land, and then they'll be kind of making their schedule for development from there. Their hope is to break ground on their property in this fall. The property that they'll be constructing this facility on is about 55 acres off of Beaver Dam, just north of Northtown. And then 2 items from the Parking Commission. The Parking Commission will be holding a town hall meeting on Tuesday, June 8th at 7 p.m. here in the chambers. The purpose of that town hall is they really want to hear from the community, from business owners, from residents on their perceptions of parking, concerns they have parking, things that they think are going well with parking. We're working again with our communications intern. She was working hard to put together some flyers and things, and we're going to start getting the word out on that and hopefully have a good turnout from there. And then the Parking Commission also decided to conduct a new parking study for downtown. We've conducted 2 parking studies for downtown. First was done, I believe it was in 2016. And then I redid it in 2019 with my planning intern that summer. But then having discussion with the Parking Commission, we deemed it appropriate to do it again because our downtown has seen a significant change since 2019 in the amount of businesses that we've seen come down there, new apartment units that have opened up. So we thought it was appropriate, as we're looking at parking for specifically downtown, to have a current and updated parking study. So that'll be conducted this summer as well. That's all I have, Mr. Chair.
I did see your Facebook post on the meeting coming up on June 8th. That was good. Anybody else see it? Yeah. I'm hoping for a good turnout that evening. Those that have concerns of the parking. So good, thank you. Anything else for Dave? Thank you, Mr. Chansky. HRA, Eric?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Bear with me while I balance a little bit here. Not a whole lot to update on for this month. John is out today, so I'll be doing his report as well. We do continue to work with legal counsel Martha Ingram to help acquire a tax forfeited lot in Serene Pines and have that lot added to the master purchase agreement for the Brainerd Oaks Serene Pines developer that we are involved with level contracting. We do have a tentative schedule that Martha laid out for us now, and kind of the steps that we need to take. We will be approaching the county first, and then looks like the city council and the PNF will be probably the last step before we get this to level contracting into that purchase and redevelopment agreement. Moving forward with that, which is a good thing, but it does take a little bit of time. Good thing is the contractor's not in a huge hurry because he does have a lot of other lots that he can build on. So Monty is happy with where we're at. HRA does have 2 job openings. Figured I'd let the EDA know in case they've got connections that people have some interest. We've got a job opening for an accounting specialist. And then we also have an administrative position that is opening up or is open, and we'll be looking for that, and we'll be posting that probably in the next week or 2. The administrative specialist position is posted on a number of websites, on the dispatch website as well. A couple of people that are moving on to different jobs, which is great for them, and opportunities that are out there. And then lastly, our new maintenance supervisor did just start this week, which we're really excited to have that person in place. He started on the 1st. and really happy with where he's at already. He's got a wealth of experience in the maintenance side of things, and I've been able to take him to all of our properties within Brainerd and within Crosby, and he's going to hit the ground running. So super excited there. As far as rehab, any questions on rehab, I'll probably have to defer to John, but I'll just go through his update. Northeast Brainerd Small Cities Grant has rehab completed on 1 commercial unit, 9 mixed-use units, 1 single-family rental rehab, and 3 owner-occupied units. We have 2 owner-occupied units and 1 duplex that are in construction right now, and then there are 2 multifamily and 5 single-family rehab applications that are in the verification process. So still working through those, which is good. We continue to look for at least 5 more single-family owner-occupied rehabs in Northeast. So again, council members and members of the EDA, as you are out in the community talking, especially for that Northeast quadrant, if there are people that say, hey, I need some funds for rehab, we do have some money left for that specific area. Give them our name, give them our number, have them contact us. We're here to help. If they aren't in that specific area, we do have that Crow Wing County Housing Trust Fund that could potentially help them too. So we do have rehab dollars available. Other than that, unless I've got any questions, that's the end of my report.
Thank you, Eric. Does anyone have any questions for Eric? Good, thank you so much.
Thank you.
You're able to hobble back. How much longer on your,
3 weeks today, but I'm not counting.
okay. Ladek, Tyler?
Good morning, Mr.
Good
Chair. Few updates from Bladek for this month. I'm in a group that's currently working with the county to determine the needs of the area and the use of the American Rescue Plan funds. Those funds, the county funds, have arrived. Their first half of their funding, they were a total amount, I believe, is $12.6 million that the county was receiving. They have received their first half. Now, they're not eligible to apply for their second half of that funding until 12 months from the date they received the first half of the funding. So it'll be obviously the end of May of 2022 before they will receive their second half of their funding. A few items that are on the table for discussion, obviously housing assistance. There is some, they're going to put some significant funds towards broadband. And also we have some obviously some child care concerns in the county. So they are looking at a few different areas for assistance there. The beauty of this is that they have until 12/31 of 2024 to spend all of this money. So there isn't a huge crunch on the getting this money out and getting it out quickly. The reason for me being at the table primarily is to try to understand and get a pulse on what is happening out in the communities throughout Crow Wing County in regards to need and what type of assistance could potentially be needed from our business community. And as of today, we aren't hearing a lot. We aren't hearing a lot of need for grants again, but it's not something that's off the table. It's just we're not hearing it. Doesn't mean it's not out there, but this time of the year things tend to ramp up and people get pretty focused on what's going on with their businesses. So I know that we will continue to address this if there are economic needs as far as assistance is concerned for our business community. But those conversations are ongoing. They hope to have something in front of the county commissioners here probably within the next month. I would say more than likely in one of their July meetings, there'll be some recommendations for the commissioners to consider in regards to how the funding will be used. Yeah, a couple other things that we're working on right now. Our website is currently undergoing a pretty major overhaul. Within the next 2 months, our site will be updated, new themes, a new look. This is all in conjunction with our rebranding that we're working on right now. So we hope to have a more robust website out there. We hope to have quite a bit more information that we can provide. Information regarding starting a business, relocating, reviewing job postings, obtaining up-to-date funding options and resources. Of course, we'll link to Brainerd's website. So we hope to have this as as a new look for us and get some more information out there and get it out there and be a bit more efficient with our site. And we do have a lot of traffic on our site, so it's important that we remain up to date. I'll give a couple quick updates on the Unified Fund. We held a meeting this past Tuesday where we had 2 loan requests, and I now have 2 more loan requests that will come in front of our Unified Fund board here within the next 2 weeks. The loan request, one was located in Brainerd, one in Baxter, and we have 2 in Crosby. So again, the fund is performing as it needs to. 0 delinquencies, 0 late payments. We $1.1 million has been lent out to date, and we only have about $500,000 that's outstanding. So everyone is handling their business very, very well with regards to that. That's a credit certainly to the board, but also to the banks that are the primary funder with these. We were scheduled to have a River to Rail meeting yesterday. It got postponed to next week. It was running up in conjunction with CTC's annual meeting, so we did not have a high attendance. So the decision, working with Bruce, was to move that to next week. An update quick on the key recruitment program that's led by Mike Bierkness. As you can see in the report that I provided, through April of 2021, he's conducted 126 interviews. He's received 240 quality resumes that he's reviewed, 379 total resumes he's received. He's done 5 spousal referrals. He's filled 4 jobs, and as you can see, I've added another bullet. That was 4 jobs filled through the end of April of 2021, 1 for a Brainerd-based business. And then he's filled 2 more jobs in May, both for employees for Brainerd businesses. So the program is really a solid program. It's working very well. Mike continues to bring quality individuals and families into our community. So he just does a fantastic job. And for those on this board, just to alert everyone, he does have a CFO opening for Stern Companies. Jerry Sinner has decided to retire, and he will be retiring on August 1st. So if anybody has anybody that they know that is looking to potentially become a CFO of one of our manufacturers here locally, just go ahead and get a hold of Mike, and he'll have a good conversation with you regarding that opening. The last thing I want to mention is that we're working currently with the airport staff on some marketing advertising inside the terminal. Bladek owns one of the systems inside the airport, so when the TVs are running, there are ads that can pop through the system there. We have offered those as part of our membership. We offer those 30-second slots to our businesses, and the system is outdated. It's old. And so we're working with some of the updates that the airport is working on with their systems out there, and we'll upgrade that system as well. So just another opportunity for our businesses to advertise and have some more exposure with people coming in and out of the airport. So that is all that I have for right now. I'm happy to answer any questions if anybody has some. I know that David's providing an update on the American Relief Plan as well. So,
Any questions for Tyler? Great report. Thank you, Tyler, very much.
You're welcome.
Okay, old business. Mr. Chansky.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the first item we have for you on old business, we wanted to have a recap on the strategic planning retreat that was held on May 18th. In your packet, we did have the finalized versions of the worksheets that Bruce Miles led you all through during that retreat, with all the identified things that the group worked on. What staff then did is we looked at, especially from the beliefs worksheet and the vision and priorities worksheet, as well as the future worksheet, looked through that, and we thought was the best thing for the EDA would be to kind of establish a mission and goals. Then we took the liberty of drafting both a mission and some goals based off of those vision and priorities and goals that you had identified during the retreat. Our goal here is have the kind of discussion, get feedback from the commission as to what you think of these, any changes you'd like to be made, start from scratch, just kind of give your feedback and your reaction to these. We're on the right track, and then kind of get some direction from staff moving forward. I think our goal today would be kind of get a nailed down mission and goals, again, reaction, then we'd come back in July for the commission to formally adopt the mission and goals. That would then be the guiding element for, especially us as staff, as we work with the EDA in making Brainerd a more vibrant business community. So,
Good.
Jennifer, is there anything you wanted to add to that?
Nope, sounds good. Thank you, David.
If you want, Mr. Chair, I can just go work through
Please.
it. Okay.
Please.
So for the mission, we listed make Brainerd an attractive and vibrant business community, providing economic support through programs, marketing, education, development, and redevelopment. Those came out of, again, looking at specifically, I was looking at the beliefs worksheet, what you as a commission identified as what you believe your roles and responsibilities of the EDA, also how you believe the board should do its work, and then also going into also looking at the vision and priorities worksheet, really trying to see what kind of items did you believe as a commission that the EDA should be working on, and then trying to draft that into one statement that would be kind of a guiding principle for the EDA. I guess I would stop there, because then that influences the goals, and ask if there's any comments, questions on this proposed mission statement.
I think after going through the retreat, the mission is spot on, I believe. So I don't know anyone else's opinion, but it seems to be what we all discussed. So
I agree.
I think it's too broad, but that's just my opinion.
If it was more specific, what would you want?
Well, I don't know. I haven't considered it. I just think it's very broad. Anything fits under marketing, education, development programs. I mean, we could do literally anything.
I do agree. Maybe the education aspect of it isn't really in our wheelhouse. As far as education, I know what you mean. I know what you meant by it. You know, it's more of allowing people to know what we are offering, what we need, what opportunities are out there. But I think that's all part of marketing. So maybe if you want to tweak that.
But it's fine. I mean, we have a overwhelming majority of people who like it. So let's move on.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Just for clarification, so I guess what I'm hearing in this is to remove the word education, as it doesn't seem to apply. So I think what I'm hearing the EDA say is that the mission statement looks good, but remove the word education. Is that kind of the consensus of the group?
If we were going to change anything, that's what I would agree with.
Your call, Wayne.
I would agree. Yeah, take education out.
Excellent. Mr. Chair, then and members of the commission, moving from there, just identified 5 goals. I think there could be more, but let's kind of start small. That I felt, again, looking at the vision, priorities worksheet, and especially the future work worksheet. But I think were common themes. Some goals would be and some of these things are things that you already are doing, so kind of some easy wins and low-hanging fruit in here too. Interview existing businesses to identify each business individual needs to take the next step in their business development. I think this was discussed in, where was it? One of the worksheets. Under economic gardening, under the beliefs worksheet under EDA roles and responsibilities, kind of that economic gardening piece, helping the businesses figure out what are the little things that you need to take that next step, and then the EDA kind of gathering all that information, then figuring out, kind of taking what the EDA then can do to help take those next steps, which would go into the next goal, which would be create programs and seek funding to address the following needs. Some of these, again, identified in the beliefs worksheet, vision priorities, and the future worksheet. Some of those programs could be, and again, this is not an exhaustive list, residential and commercial building facade improvements, small business support services, shared workspaces, and incubator spaces, and succession planning for local businesses. In there, it's not just to create the programs. One of the things that was discussed, especially in the future work worksheet, as things that you would like to learn and review, is to look at future funding options and grants. But I think kind of part of that would be programs, and those two things kind of go together. We kind of need to know what kind of programs we want to do before we can really know what kind of grants we can, or other funding sources we should be going after. The second, or I should say the third goal, continuing on those, was to work with community partners to develop a cohesive marketing strategy for the community. Again, that came from that marketing aspect that you identified as a pretty much an important piece of what the EDA does. But then also that aspect of wanting to be a cohesive, vibrant business community. So figuring out how can we not just incorporate in a marketing strategy everyone from downtown to West Brainerd to East Brainerd to South Brainerd. How can we incorporate everyone into a cohesive marketing strategy for the community? Create an inventory of underused or underdeveloped properties and work with property owners to market them for redevelopment. This is something I've already started to kind of look into. What are properties, not to say vacant land, but properties that may be oversized and have a small development on them that potentially could be split or have another cohesive development placed on them, or just sites that are not being used well, and maybe we can work as an EDA to engage those property owners and work with them as a way to potentially market those, to help them market those for redevelopment. And then the final goal that I listed was evaluate the city's vacant industrial property for non-industrial compatible uses that would address current and future needs of the community. This was one item that you did have some discussion on at the retreat of looking at. We have this industrial park property. Nothing's, we've had some interest, but nothing's actually happened. And are there potential uses that would be compatible in that area that would address those needs that the city has today, and then in the short and long term as well? Not necessarily ruling out any industrial uses, but how can we potentially broaden the potential scope of the uses for those properties to fit the needs of the city? So with that, Mr. Chair, I'll take any comments that the commission has on those goals. Any goals you feel like don't fit, or too ambitious? Any goals you think that maybe aren't in here that would be more pressing?
Commissioners, your time to talk. Please, Gabe.
Yeah, I think this pretty well distills the 5 main goals or themes that kept coming up during our strategic planning session. So, I think it works, and I think it's a good set of 5 goals to tackle over the next couple of years.
I agree. Small business support services. What do you have in mind for that? Sorry
So
if I
that could
missed
be,
that.
yep, that could be anything working. Again, I think one of the things that internally we've discussed is, and also working with Bladek, one of the things that we've been hearing, and Tyler can speak to it more of, especially as we were going through the process of all the grants that went out in the last years. A lot of our small businesses, especially some of our older business owners, they just don't have access to things like scanners, copiers, printers. Even they don't know how to use a lot of some of the QuickBooks and other things like that, and providing essentially services. And Tyler, you can probably go into a little bit more of what some of our businesses might be, services they might need some help with.
And it is there were a number of items that they identify technology issues. I mean, when we're looking for documents that needed to be scanned and sent to us, it was next to impossible.
Okay.
People were dropping them off in the office. They were mailing something that we could have gotten in 15 seconds, really. So we started to identify those. We started listing them out, and then creating a system inside of Bladek that would allow us to provide that type of assistance. It is a program that we're looking at right now and seeing if it's scalable, if we have the staff to pull it off. But it is, and that's some of the information to go off of bullet number 1. That's some of the information that we're starting to gather as we interview our businesses, is identifying what types of needs they have. So hopefully we'll be able to I work for you guys, we work for you guys, so being able to knock a few of these goals out that are identified here is something we're already in the middle of. So, but I think it is the shared business support service. If we can create a process where people know that they can come to us to receive this type of assistance, that's what we'd like to do for them.
Good.
How about the shared workspaces and incubator spaces? What are we talking about there?
So with that, especially now in a post-COVID world, incubator spaces, I think, has been something that's been discussed for quite a while, off and on. I know Cheryl Hills with Region 5 has been really trying to push an incubator space, shared workspaces. Really what those could be is anything from a shared workspace could be simple as a space where someone can, go for the day and, they have Wi-Fi, they have access to printers, copiers, someone who it could be anyone from someone who's working from home that doesn't, they don't want to buy their own printer or copier. They can come into that space, use it, maybe they pay a membership fee or something, and they have access to those, access to meeting rooms that can be reserved. And then could be, so anyone working from home, and we're going to be seeing more of that moving into the future. And then even as a tourist region, maybe people who are coming up here, who then something comes up with work, they need a space to work. There's a space for them to, again, to have Wi-Fi, access to printers, copier scanners, whatever they may need. Incubator spaces would be more of to help new businesses. So kind of fledgling businesses, they're just trying to get their foot in. It's a space that they can take temporarily. They're not having to sign a 2-3 year lease in a downtown space or other space in the community that maybe needs some renovation. It's a low investment for them. They can kind of get their foot in the door, figure out if their business idea is going to work, and once they get going, then they can move into a permanent location. You'll see those throughout the state and throughout the country as a lot of well-known businesses now, kind of that's how they started. They needed that space to kind of get them going, and once they were going, they're able to move into their own space. So that would kind of be the purpose of an incubator space, especially for our small businesses. How it gives someone a space to do what they need to do until they can really get a base, and then let them graduate into their own location.
We work in cooperation with Cross Lake Communications up in Cross Lake, and we have a pilot program of this that's working right now. Obviously took a pretty big step back in the last year, but with the number of home-based businesses, with the number of individuals that are coming up here from, now it's coming up on Thursday or coming up Wednesday night, this gives them the ability to go in and use a cubicle or use an office at Cross Lake Communications and have access to all of the things that David just mentioned. It's had some relatively decent success. And we're gonna relaunch it again this summer, but it is just what David said. It allows people to come in, use printers, use copiers. If they want to have a meeting, they can use the conference room. They have access to high-speed internet. They can run Zoom meetings out of there. They can use their conference room. So we've run it as a pilot up there just to see because there is a lot more of a transplant audience in Cross Lake than probably here in Brainerd proper, but it has worked. It's a good model. I think we can take it quite a bit farther, but we needed to see if it would work first. So, and we're getting some decent results.
I think it's a great idea because, home-based businesses, people don't want strangers coming into their homes, and this would give them the ability to meet with clients or potential clients or people in a neutral place.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
When I traveled, I used them a lot. Actually, some of them are located near airports, so you could go in, and if you were there for the day, you could have access to all sorts of technology, printers, all of that stuff. It was pretty nice, but it comes with a fee. If you're going to set this up, you've got to understand what the pricing model of it is too. I mean, us using Cross Lake Communications, it's just something that they wanted to do it's good for their business too, so.
Mm-hmm.
Do we have any idea who would be managing this space?
That has been a discussion we kind of had internally. potential, as Tyler said, that's something potential Bladek would be interested in potentially managing. We have been trying to look at, again, a space, a potential space, identified space here in the city, especially in the core. One space that I think we've kind of preliminarily identified that may be a good opportunity would be the City Hall Annex right next door. It does need work to kind of get it to that level, but that would be a space that we have identified that potentially could be, again, the core of city, easy around your other services such as the county, the city, downtown. So we're working on that, and that would be part of this goal would be, identify a space, identify, who's going to run it, what the program be looking like, what, as Tyler said, what would essentially the financing model be like. So, because again, all these things, printers, copiers, internet, all come with fees. How would it be financed? So that would all encompass in that goal. Trying to figure that
So
out.
if you did use the annex, would it be open 24 hours? That would be the tricky part with home-based businesses. It's not an 8 to 5 job.
And that's, I think, not something we've discussed at this point.
So the other ones that I've gone to have had, you've basically had key code access. So you could do it. It's not outside the realm of possibility. You just have to identify secured space, and if there is other offices in there, everything's got to be locked down. But yeah, I had key code access, so it was pretty easy. But
I
it
just
was
didn't know with the government building if it would be allowed to be open after
good.
certain times.
Good point.
Public.
It's a public, and there was, and part of the discussion too has been
It's
in
just a
that
question.
situation of whether or not, again, part of that discussion would be identified as if, for example, if the annex would be used, is whether or not the city would remain as the owner of the annex.
Got it.
Well, Tony, and another way I read that is this isn't necessarily Bladek or the city creating a shared workspace or incubator spaces, but providing information and access to our residents, because there are, Pieringer's got some individual offices in the basement of the lofts that is $250 a month. Maybe we can work with him to get weekly rates or daily rates for people that they could contact Pieringer to just use those office spaces while they're here on vacation. Or we have a potential commercial kitchen moving in over at the NP Center. We just get people in contact with that incubator space of a commercial kitchen that is no government resources except for connecting the two people.
Okay.
Yep. So we'd be working.
That's an option.
Yep. That's an absolute option. Be working with our, the current market and figuring out what are some spaces, again, maybe Dave Perringer or other owners have spaces that they would like to make available and run that kind of program as well.
I was just going to add, I think Casey Gromer had submitted for Destination Downtown. That was one of the entries in the last round of Destination Downtown, and so she might be a good resource to tap into.
Mm-hmm.
What's her name, Marie?
Casey Gromer. I think I don't know how far she got into the competition, but I think one of the big barriers was just construction cost is what it came down to, so.
I think they're all good goals. We can always add more goals, but the one thing is, how do we track them? How do we track our goals?
So this goes back to that in the where'd my mouse go? In the packet, that future worksheet that Bruce had. These goals would then kind of come into, we would place these on that, and then each EDA meeting we kind of have an update. We as staff would give an update. Where are we on these goals? What have we done?
And I think that's a really important point, and in a past life, and even with the city, the council has identified goals, we do a tracking sheet. And so that the council is given quarterly updates, so you know exactly what the goals were and what has been accomplished. The other thing that I would suggest to you is to identify a timeline. Are these 1-year goals, 2-year goals, 3-year goals? And then on at least a minimum of a quarterly basis, you'll be getting updates on these goals.
Do you want to set a timeline today?
Yes, please. I think it'll be really helpful when we come back in July for you to adopt this mission statement and goals.
So we want a timeline for each goal.
No, I think just generally overall. So are these 2-year goals?
Okay.
That your expectation as these goals will be accomplished in 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, 1 year. I guess I would also say too that, you know, the amount of time that city staff, I guess, works for the EDA is limited. We do have other full-time jobs as well. So I guess I would just say, you know, to be realistic about timeframes. Looking at these goals, as David mentioned, a lot of these we're kind of doing already. And so I don't know that these are really overwhelming goals, but if you're looking at something like Incubator Space, which I think would be a true benefit, but as Commissioner Johnson mentioned, you know, maybe it's just us connecting dots more than it is us creating space. So I guess I would just kind of keep that in mind when you're looking at goals or at timeframes.
Well, Jennifer, I'd like a recommendation from staff on the timeframes. I mean, we have pay the city $30,000 a year, play Billy X 60. That gets us a few hundred hours of work. How long is it going to take to get this done in a few hundred hours a year?
I think that 2-year goals would be good. And if we're looking at adopting this in July, you consider your budget in August, correct? So that would probably be a good time frame for you to evaluate these goals and how the city and Bladek and the HRA are kind of doing on your behalf. So I think 2 years.
Jennifer, with the first goal, is there a way to complete that one first? Because I think that one is the trickle down for the rest. I don't know what
Tyler's already on that one.
We're already in
Tyler's
process.
working on it, yeah.
Yep, we're in process of that already.
I didn't know if there was a way to speed up that one.
That one you're
That's
planning on
awful.
finishing this summer, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So that'll be the first one.
So let's put a 6-month timeline on that goal.
Perfect.
No, but I think if the recommendation is 2 years, I think we put these all as 2 years goals with the understanding that goal number 1 that is already being worked on, we do want to see first because we're going to have to take that into account in any other steps we move forward. Because if we're not meeting the needs of our current businesses, what are we doing?
And that's going to continue to change over time too. You know, in 2 years, it'll probably be different than it will be at the end of this summer.
Yeah.
That's an ongoing goal. We got to stay in communication.
And I think the other thing too is, you know, as you get these quarterly updates, maybe we get a year out and you feel like staff has satisfied all of these goals. And maybe that is the time at which you say, okay, this is great. Now we have other goals. Now we want to move forward. We've done this, but now let's take it to the next step and let's do this. You know, so while we put a 2-year time frame on it, if that's what you ask of us, they may be completed in a year.
Tyler?
The only, probably the 5th goal on here, evaluate the city's vacant industrial property for non-industrial. I mean, that's got to work in conjunction, obviously, with the city, with city council to determine what those future needs could potentially be. A couple of these are just, I mean, they're all fantastic goals for what I felt like came out of that meeting as well. And who would they be? So those are going to take some time. A couple of those are going to obviously take some time. Some of these will be, I feel that we're going to be able to click these off pretty quickly. But again, it is ongoing. These are things that we have to keep in constant communication with everyone. The only question I have is regards to goal number 3. Who are the community partners? So if we're going to partner to develop a cohesive marketing strategy, did we identify who those community partners were?
That would be part of that goal, is to identify who they are.
I think that would be dictated by the answer to number 1.
Okay.
Like, what are the needs? Then who are the partners to connect those needs?
The reason I asked that question is I can add that question in to the evaluations that we're working on. So is that as we ask these questions of our businesses, is that something else that you want us to be asking? You know, what would you look to be as if I came to your chiropractic office, what would you look to say if I asked you as a business, what type of marketing strategy would you like to see the EDA take on? Is that a relevant question for us to add to this to our list right now?
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think the overall marketing strategy, when I think of community partners, I'm thinking of Bladek, I'm thinking of the chamber, I'm thinking of community action. And the more everybody's on the same page, along with city staff and whatever we put out through the council or whatever it may be, it should all brand together.
Okay.
So the more you guys communicate, the better. I think the marketing strategy is an easy one to start implementing too. It's just maybe that meeting, I don't know, maybe we have them all come here and we all talk about it here and come up with some kind of branding strategy through that. You've done some of that, Gabe. So I think along with what Tyler's doing right now, figuring out what the community needs and coming up with a new marketing strategy alongside that, I think that's a good first step. And along with figuring out this incubator space and small business support services or center or whatever it may be, those are all things that we can implement pretty quickly. You know, those could all be 1-year goals or less, but I think putting it all on 2-year timeframes is reasonable.
I was just going to add that for the marketing strategy component, does it make sense to interview people that are outside of our business community to learn, like, what do they need to know about us to attract them here? So, like, going beyond just interviewing existing businesses. I know that, like, broadens the scope of what who you have to reach out to get information, but I just think that would be really helpful to inform any marketing strategy we develop.
As in an outside I'm sorry, Mary, just so.
Like if we're trying to attract other businesses or, you know, people from the cities to move here and start
what are
businesses, what do they need
consumers-
to know
what
about
attracts the
Brainerd? Like,
consumer?
what's the gap that we're not filling to attract them here?
Like a perception issue that
Yeah.
might be out there, some stigma that needs to be
Are they,
taken
they
care of.
perceive Brainerd as it's just a tourist destination and
Mm-hmm.
you know, they don't see it as being a good fit for their business. What information can we put out through marketing to attract more businesses to Brainerd?
And I think some of that might just, not to get too specific on this, but a lot of our marketing has been based on, you know, the lakes and hunting and fishing, but we actually have a city here too. And we can use that for marketing alongside, you know, as Dave would say, people jumping off docks. They don't do that in town here. There's not much of that. So having your business in town is what we want.
So maybe kind of a sidebar comment, but on the subject, we were approached actually last summer by Mary Devine Johnson at Visit Brainerd with a concept of this kind of relocation packet. I don't know if that's really what it's called a relocation information.
Resident packet.
New resident packet, kind of all of that, to try to say, hey, we've got a great city here. We have everything that you need. And how do we start appealing to people and getting that word out to say, come move to Brainerd. Move your family here, move your business here. We actually have a meeting scheduled next week. As I mentioned, Jessie Ernster, our communications intern, started last week. And so one of her goals this summer is to try to help us frame that up. So we're meeting, I think, on the 10th to start talking about that relocation new resident packet.
And going back to what Marie brought up, I think it's a good idea. Let's figure out what people want to see or hear in Brainerd to move their business here. I don't know how you'd implement that easily, but if Tyler, you could start thinking of strategies. One that is possible is when a new business moves here, you show up and say, why? Why'd you move to Brainerd? You know, because we have, in the old co-op building, there's a boutique moving in, and they're closing their Pequot location and opening one in Brainerd. Why are you closing Pequot and moving to Brainerd?
Bypass.
What are we doing right that brought you here? Or is the fresh bypass there just so bad that the old bypass here is good enough? I don't know, but asking those
poor
questions
internet.
so we could capitalize on continuing to attract businesses is a good idea.
There's 8 or 9 other downtown businesses that have showed up in the last year downtown too. So we could always talk to them. Why did you move downtown? What brought you here? What attracted you? Let's do more of that.
Well, thank you. I think we have some nice kind of framework here to bring something back to you for you to consider approving. I also want to thank you for taking the time. I know what 3.5 hours that we spent in that strategic planning session, but I think it was really beneficial. I think it really helps staff to know what your priorities are and what you would like to see us doing to help move our businesses forward, improve economic development. So I really just wanted to thank you for taking the time. I know you're all busy people, and I appreciate it.
So then, Mr. Chair, again, we will bring a finalized mission and goals to the EDA for you to formally adopt in July.
Good, thank you. I just want to reflect upon what the statement about interviewing the businesses that have come to Brainerd, the 10, 12 that have been mentioned. Who's going to do that?
We are.
Bladek will do that? That'll be good to hear, your response from that. Good, thank you. Thank you for the update on that. How about the American Rescue Plan?
Yes, Mr. Chair. So, as you all know, President Biden signed the American Rescue Plan Act on March 11th. In April, we kind of gave you a little bit of information on what we knew was included in that. Again, we knew that $65.1 billion was going to be distributed to counties, $45.6 billion to entitlement cities, which are cities over 50,000 in population, and $19.5 billion to non-entitlement cities, so cities with under 50,000. We also knew that there were essentially 4 buckets that were going to be included as potential uses for those funds. Responding to the health emergency with respect to the coronavirus disease 2019 or its negative economic impacts. Responding to workers performing essential work during COVID-19 public health emergency, provisions for government services to the extent of the reduction in revenue of such metropolitan city non-entitlement or unit of local government or county due to COVID-19, and to make necessary investments in water, sewer, and broadband infrastructure. On May 17th, the Treasury's finally started to release information about actually what the funding is going to look like and more detailed as to what eligible uses will be. They did that by releasing this interim final rule that was included in your packet, this 39-page joy of a read. In there, we've begun diving through that, and I'll just highlight some items that I captured that might be of interest to the commission shortly. But also, I want to, looking at the information that the Treasury released, staff, meaning myself, estimates that the city of Brainerd may receive an American Rescue Plan payment in the ballpark of $1.4 million. And again, this I want to stress this is a very rough estimate. I gave the calculation in my memo as to how I came up with that number. That's based off of, again, I also gave the guidance from the Treasury as to how that was calculated, taking the population of Brainerd as actually given by the Treasury. They had a spreadsheet that had every state, and then within every state, every non-entitlement unit of government and its population, and it said you will use these numbers. So based off of those numbers, these look like pre-census numbers. So a listed population for the city of Brainerd of 13,434. Dividing that by the total population of all non-entitlement units of government in the state of Minnesota, which is a little over 3.5 million, times the total non-entitlement unit of government payment to the state of Minnesota, which is $376,932,399. That came up with $1,421,166. This is not the final number. It may change. How it may change, I don't see this number going down. It may go up. And the reason it may go up is because in the list of non-entitlement units of government, they included things that they call minor civil divisions. For the most part, those are townships. And it gave the states the ability to kind of determine whether or not they were going to make townships or certain townships eligible for payment. The Treasury, in their interim rule or in their guidance, did say that they do strongly encourage states that are considered strong MCD states, which one of them is Minnesota, to consider MCDs, mostly townships, as eligible for payment. This time I've not heard whether or not how the state's going to determine that, if they're gonna say all townships, all NEUs are gonna get a payment, or only certain ones. So based off of how they did choose to address those MCDs, only townships will ultimately affect maybe what the city of Brainerd's cut is. I think we've heard some things that it could go as high. I think, Jennifer, you've heard like 1.9 million, so there could be some fluctuation there. Also, I believe Connie has heard that we anticipate that the city will get paid in 2 lump sums, 50% of our payment in 2021 and then an additional 50% in 2021. Connie, you want to speak more on that?
That is for sure how the entitlement entities are getting paid, is 50% now in a year, so I'm assuming the state will do something like that with the NEUs as well.
And that's on the county's getting it as well.
Yep. That's the difference with it, is that the city's funding goes to the state of Minnesota first, so they could make adjustments to that. The county's money came from the feds, but you could see a change.
Yeah. So again, the ARP Act gave states 120 days from the time that they received the money, a maximum of 120 days to determine how they're going to be distributing it.
And the state of Minnesota has filed for an extension.
Yes, so the state of Minnesota's filed for an extension, probably partially because we haven't even completed our own budget. So,
Just to clarify, it was 60 days, and then there was a 30-day extension of how we
and then
got to the 120 days.
and then another 30-day extension.
Yeah.
So they've already filed for an extension before we even hit the 60-day mark. So I don't think we'll probably be knowing exactly what we're going to be getting and when we're going to be getting it, probably into August. It'd be my guess at this point. So again, going through this packet, I don't expect that you have had, unless you really had some night reading that you wanted to read through these 39 pages. Again, they're the 4 buckets. They're having looked through this. Really, that first bucket I think most affects kind of what the EDA does. That second with the essential workers. In the interim final rule, they did limit that. They said such workers include staff at nursing homes, hospitals, and home care settings, workers at farms, food production facilities, grocery stores and restaurants, janitors and sanitary workers, truck drivers, transit staff, warehouse workers, public health and safety staff, childcare workers, educators, and other school staff, and social service and human resource staff. Again, that's about providing what they refer to as premium pay. And then the provision for government services is about any revenue loss about the previous year, which I think will be discussion we'll be having with the city council. But I think the main piece for you as an EDA, I think you may be interested in, is that negative impacts, including assistance to households, small businesses, and nonprofits. In here, they do list eligible uses. They say eligible uses under this bucket that respond to negative economic impacts of the public health emergency must be designed to address an economic harm result from or exacerbated by the public health emergency. And it goes on to expound on that to say an eligible use must respond to the identified negative economic impact. Responses must be related and reasonable, proportional to the extent and type of harm experiences. Uses that bear no relation or grossly disproportionate to the type or extent of harm experienced would not be eligible uses. And then they go into more impact to talk about assistance to unemployed workers, assistance to households. When they get to the small business and nonprofits, they say that talk about how small business and nonprofits face significant challenges in covering payroll, mortgages, or rent, and other operating costs as a result to the public health emergency and measures taken to contain the spread of the virus. Some of the, again, it's not, they do talk about in this that any uses that they list is not an exhaustive list, and there may be others that would be eligible. And they do talk about, okay, if you're going to do something outside of this list, here are things to consider. But things that they do list are loans or grants to mitigate financial hardship, such as declines in revenue or impacts of periods of business closure. Loans, grants, or in-kind assistance to implement COVID-19 prevention or mitigation tactics. Another item that they have in here is technical assistance, counseling, or other services to assist business planning needs. They also, another eligible expense in this area would be aid to impacted industries. And one of the things they really, in this interim rule, try to emphasize is to encourage that money be spent on industries such as tourism, travel, and hospitality that were disproportionately negatively impacted by COVID-19. They don't exclude others, but they do put an emphasis on that should be kind of where that should come from. They say when considering providing aid to industries other than tourism, travel, and hospitality, recipients should consider the extent of the economic impact as compared to tourism, travel, and hospitality. And then they go into other things. Other items, again, under this would be building stronger communities through investments in housing and neighborhoods. And such, under that item, uses could be services to address homelessness, such as supportive housing and improve access to stable, affordable housing among unhoused individuals, affordable housing development to increase supply of affordable and high-quality living units, housing vouchers, residential counseling, housing navigation assistance to facilitate household moves to neighborhoods, addressing educational disparities. They have a whole thing on there in education, promoting healthy childhood environments, and use it. And then they have a whole section here on uses outside of the scope. They do say, for example, a general infrastructure project, for example, typically would not be included unless the project responded to a specific pandemic public health need or a specific negative economic impact like those described in the previous sections. The ARPA explicitly includes infrastructure if it's necessary and in water, sewer, and or broadband. So at this point, again, there's a lot more in here, kind of going over some of those general items, kind of open the floor to questions from the commission, kind of discussion. How would you like us, what more information moving forward would you like from us as staff? How would you like to kind of put this information together as we anticipate you as a commission will probably likely want to be making some recommendations to the city council as to how you believe these funds that the city will be receiving over the next 2 years, likely over the next 2 years, could be used.
You go to Mike first.
I would just say, come up with a list of ways that we can accomplish our goals with this money. Anything that we can put towards the goals we went over today, if possible.
Yeah, just listening to your highlights, there are a couple items in there that absolutely fall in line with some of our goals, so.
Connie?
I would just like to add, there's many provisions as part of this ARP Act, and this, where the city is going to get a direct allocation is one of the many different provisions. There's other parts of the act that are coming out for like EDA resources, PPP loans. There's several different avenues coming out. So one of the big things that they talked about in the webinars that I've been attending to learn more about it is to think broadly and think strategically, and to really look at all parts of the act so that we can maximize our potential benefit that we may be able to get from this act. So I think that that's still kind of up in the air, and not knowing exactly how much money that we're going to get at this time also makes it a little bit challenging at this point.
Jennifer?
And I think another thing too is we've discussed internally, staff about a potential work session for the city council when we know exactly how much money the city will be receiving and we get some more clear guidance on what can and can't be used, and finding out what the council and where the council would like to see these funds be used too.
And Mr. Chair, also, we'll also, as staff, again, and working with Tyler as well, be keeping a keen eye to figuring out what the state plans on using their allocations for, and then from there, what kind of programs they might be developing that the city can take advantage of. The same with the county, figuring out the county is planning on using their $12 million for, that then the city may also be able to maybe dip into as well to aid our community.
Gabe?
Yeah, You got a comment and a question. I'll start with my comment. I think what I'm most interested in learning is the actual number of dollars we're going to receive. And until we know that, I don't think it really matters all that much. But after we figure out that number, we'll just come up with ideas and you tell us if we can or can't. Or Danny Locke will tell us if we can or can't, probably, right? But I have a question on the allocation. Is there a reason that $45 billion went to entitlement cities and 19.5 went to non-entitlement cities? Because I did a little research on it, and about a third of America, 1/3 of the population, lives in entitlement cities. And about 2/3 of the population live in non-entitlement cities. So is there a reason or rationale why Congress or President Biden would give these high population areas twice as much money? They would give them 2/3 of the ARP money and then give 1/3 of the money to 2/3 of the population that live in rural, low population areas? Is there a reason why they would do that?
That's a very good question. I have no idea. I personally haven't heard any justification as to why that was done that way. To add to it, Commissioner Johnson, even talking about going back when I was talking about those, the state of Minnesota figuring out how it's going to work with those MCDs, is that I also heard recently is part of the thing that makes even Minnesota unique is when it comes to like townships, we have like 10% of all the townships or MCDs in this country. So we have also a disproportionate number of MCDs, which kind of puts us at almost a little bit of a disadvantage on top of that now other states, cities like Brainerd don't have to compete with that, and now we're essentially in a way competing with these other smaller units of government for these funds.
Yeah, it doesn't seem fair. To me, the CARES Act made sense, and how they're funding the counties. Counties is a per capita basis. Your county, you have a head living in your county, you get X amount of dollars.
Correct.
That's what they did with the CARES Act, but with the American Rescue Plan, it seems like they kind of divided the money up based on voting patterns or something, as opposed to needs or population.
They wouldn't do that, would they?
I don't know. That's why I ask. I have no idea.
That's the justification that I've heard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I've heard, and that's the only one that's come out that said this is what they think it was, how they allocated that.
So this formula is not set in stone yet?
So the formula is, from everything I have read, because in that one of the other distribution guidance, it did say in there that this formula is like they shall use this formula. Where the number gets adjusted is that population of the total NEUs, the non-entitlement units of government, based off of if they include townships or not.
But is it final, or are they still looking for any opinions?
To my knowledge, the formula is final. What that population number that that 3.5 million that I included in that in my memo, whether that number is what's I think is still up to debate, because they haven't decided the state hasn't decided how they're gonna treat those MCDs, those townships.
Are they accepting opinions at this point?
I have not heard.
Isn't
Connie,
that a
have you
normal
heard it?
process
Have you heard
where they
anything?
ask for opinion?
I haven't, but it is an interim final rule, so it isn't a final rule. We can do some research and
Okay.
find out. It's not final, it's interim final, and the federal government likes to do,
I just didn't
interim
know if they were
rules,
looking
interim final
for
rule.
opinions from the community or not.
We'll see if
Sometimes
we
they
can
do,
find
and
out.
sometimes they don't.
I will tell you that in regards to the tourism and hospitality, the state I was in a meeting last week with the Department of Employment and Economic Development, and the state is looking at a funding plan to deal with the tourism and hospitality side of it. We don't know what it's going to look like yet. So that may be something that the cities and the counties can avoid if the state decides to fund those. But talk about a moving target. It's a huge moving target because they don't know what, my question was, and obviously, my voice was heard because I'm saying, hey, we're in the middle of tourism here, and it's to try and determine what the the impact was, or the loss, if there was such a thing as loss in this area during that time in regards to tourism and hospitality. I mean, the hotels certainly felt it, but the resorts did not. So I don't know how they're going to determine who gets what out of that, or how they're going to allocate the funding from the state. But the state's definitely digging into that. And so I would say that the county is not going to address that, but the state certainly is.
And I anticipate, as if there's anything we learned from the CARES process, was they did something very similar to this. And here's 69 pages, and then we have until December 31st of 2024 to spend this money. And so I anticipate that there'll be many more addendums to this final rule and other guidance coming over the next weeks and months.
The interesting thing is that there are a massive amount of things that they tell you can fit in underneath this. But it's interesting because they identify 2 things that you can't use it for. Just 2. But, I mean, so who knows what you're going to end up being able to use this for. Much like the CARES Act, you can find a reasonable justification to tie it back to COVID and some type of a response. But if you can't put the money into funding pension plans, or the directly or indirectly the reduction of net tax revenues. Those are the 2 things that they're saying right now. Those are the things you can't do. Everything else seems to be pretty much open for discussion.
Jennifer?
So, Mr. Chair, Commissioner Beazer, I did find the answer. So it was, comments must be received on or before July 16th of 2021. And there is a portal that you can go to make comments on this interim final rule.
Thank you.
Well, just some comments that I gave, we're not gonna be able to change where the money comes and how it comes, and
No, we are powerless.
we are powerless in that. And so we're gonna get what we get. My question, and I think Tony brought it up last month, was, should we start looking at where we could, I mean, we're gonna get $1.5 million. We know that, or $1.4 million plus whatever the county sends our way as a city of Brainerd. We should be looking at or planning some ways that we think this money should be going. I mean, that could be very broad also, but narrow it down to the 25 things or the 20 things or whatever it is. We should start looking at that. And again, Dave, I don't have any problems falling asleep, so I don't plan on reading that. But I thank you for doing it. I don't know how you did it, but.
And Mr. Chair, that's where kind of think some of the direction I think we have got. I've written down is to start looking at those ways, what you're saying, kind of those ways, potential uses that would again help you accomplish the goals as previously discussed.
Right.
Even if they are still somewhat broad now, still to start to identify, and then as we get closer and closer, we can start putting specific things under those.
Right. Yeah, if we could, in layman's terms, is what I'm looking for, something that I can, yes, that makes sense to me, because it's so broad in that presentation there.
And I think, just to do Connie a favor, I think the small expenditures were really added up to a lot of work with the CARES Act. So if we could just spend $1.5 million on like one thing, it would be much easier for Connie.
And Mr. Chair, just a follow-up comment on that. I think it would be really good to have this discussion at the EDA meeting in July. As I mentioned, the council will be having a work session. So I think it would be nice for the council to hear what the EDA would recommend using these funds on.
This is a pretty broad and a deep conversation, and I don't want to. Would it be relevant to? And I don't want to take Eric and I off the hook, but do we dedicate the full meeting to that? That's the question. I mean, because this is a lot. I mean, it can potentially be a lot. It's just and I don't know if we'll have any ideas at this point in a month from now whether or not it's going to be relevant.
And if they're taking comments until
the
July
16th.
16th, I don't anticipate a final rule for another 30 days after that.
And I think one of the things that they mentioned as well in the workshops that I participated in is one thing you can depend on is there being changes. So, we might determine something now and in 6 months to a year, they can change it. The other thing that I've learned that you have until December 31st, 2024 to obligate the funds, but you really have until December 31st, 2026 to expend the funds. Meaning if we say that we're going to do a infrastructure project that's going to take place in 2025, as long as we've committed those funds, we do have an additional time to spend the funds. So we could look at a bigger project or something like that and spending the money as well.
I guess one final question. I mean, if the EDA is a separate legal entity than the city of Brainerd, can the city of Brainerd and the EDA can you just transfer $1 million to the EDA to run economic incentive programs, and that expenditure is taken care of on the city end, and if it fits, and then we just have $1 million here to run whatever programming we come up with over the next decade?
I'm assuming it would be it doesn't just allow for general development programs or.
Well, they would be safe because of the pandemic. They'd be
Right.
safer than the old programs.
Right. So I think it would still be under the city's audit umbrella.
Yeah.
So we would still have to get documentation and that kind of stuff, and make sure that it's expended.
And from, again, kind of what we discussed when I gave the presentation to the EDA back in May and then discussed at the retreat, the city also has the authority where they can, from a just operational perspective, give whatever they want to the EDA to do for them. So even if it's not necessarily, here's the money, do what you want with it, it's, we're essentially, the city could say, EDA, we're putting expansion of the ARP in your hands, figure it out. The council could choose to do that if they so wanted to.
I wouldn't anticipate that happening, though.
But just going
be
off of Commissioner Johnson's question, the council has that authority. So of course,
I might have more
statute, but
pull
they
in
could-
this body than I do the city council.
I think economic development in this area is one of the most important things, so I don't see a problem with doing that. It's not part of our regular, taxation. It's money to help that. So I would support something like that, but it's gonna have to be a big discussion whether or not we go that direction or how much. Because this EDA, I've been saying it every meeting now, we don't have funds. We can't do anything without funds. So let's get the funds.
Anything else on the American Rescue Plan update? Anybody other comments? Thank you, everyone, for your input. Been a good discussion. Any new business? Anything on the commissioner's side?
I was just wondering, do we still have the 2 vacancies we're trying to fill? Have we received any?
So as of this time, we still have we have one open vacancy that I know we've been receiving. Do we still only have the one application for? I know the mayor. These are mayoral appointment, and how he likes to do things is normally gives kind of a window to get applications in and then review versus just taking the first application. Is he planning on doing that appointment on Monday? We don't know yet.
Have not heard.
Okay.
Tony, have you?
Okay, so waiting to hear from the mayor. And then once that person is appointed, I believe the intent is that Commissioner Bevins would then step down once they have another person to fill his seat, but he'll remain in that seat until there's someone ready to kind of fill it. So we have a full commission that way.
Good. Any other comments? No new business? Any informational meetings? Anything else? Commissioners' comments?
It's nice to see direction in this EDA, so I'm excited what we're gonna do going forward. That's all.
Yeah, I'm excited about the retreat that we had and knowing that the ARP is coming along and it's going to help us bring up our community, so.
Anything?
Yeah, I just echo that, just good job at the retreat, everybody. I really like where we're headed with this mission and these goals for the next 2 years, and it's an exciting place to be right now, I think.
This is the most active I've ever seen the EDA in the few times I've been on the board, and this is exciting to see the different things happening, and an aggressive group of commissioners here. Thank you, each one of you. This is good. Very exciting. So we have some work for Dave to do and Jennifer, and so thank you for the Dexter and Tyler. Thank you. Eric, thank you so much for your report, and Connie, I don't know how you keep it all straight, but I'm glad that you can. So, thank you very much. Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
We'll need a
All
roll
in
call.
favor?
We'll need-